AWS EC2 instance type and family. So in this video, we are going to see what all are the different instance family that is provided by AWS. And when you create an EC2 instance, you will be able to see a lot of options that has been provided by AWS. And from this bunch of options, how do you really select a specific instance type and from which family you are going to select is what we are going to discuss in this video. So when you select an instance in AWS for running your workload or application, there are a few things that you need to consider before selecting the type of instance. Mainly that comes under, what type of workload you're running and what is the resources that are required for your application or workload. For example, if your workload is a CPU intense, that means is your application is going to need a lot of compute power, like high performance processor, then probably you should pick the instance that is actually having more CPU, right? The example of this application would be like gaming servers. But if your application is more like you want to load a lot of data into the memory, for example the application that needs to read from in-memory databases, then you should select those instances that is actually having more RAM optimized, and we will get into these different types of instances in the next slide. But if your application is now more of need to do a lot of read write IO operations into the DB, for example your application read the data from the storage DB like Elasticsearch DB, etc., then you should make sure that you are using the database optimized instances for your workload application. Or maybe your applications, probably you will be working, your workload or your applications is like compute heavy, in the sense you need high performance hardware acceleration and speed is one of the critical thing for your application. Then you should use those kind of instances that actually provides you an hardware acceleration speed. Example of that kind of application would be like data pattern matching and image processing. So based on the amount of compute, memory and storage needed for your application, you have an option to select different family of instances. Within each family of these instances, you have multiple instance types. So let's go over what are the different families now. So let's take the case where your application requires equal amount of CPU, RAM, speed and storage. If it is like equally distributed, then the general purpose instance family is the one that you should choose for your applications. But if your application is compute heavy, where it requires CPU more, again all the application will require all CPU, RAM, storage and the speed. But your application is CPU intense and heavy, which requires more CPU compared to RAM and storage and hardware acceleration, then compute optimized instance family is the one that you should select. And if further, if your workload or application is actually having more need of memory, wherein it actually loads a lot of data into the memory for reading, then you should use the memory optimized instance family. Again, these are the applications loading a lot of information in the random access memory for processing. That's the application like big data analytics apps such as Hadoop. Then the memory optimized instance family is the one that you should choose. And if your application needs a constant high speed read write into database, wherein read writing and IO are input output operations to the DB is one of the critical thing, then make sure that when you create an instance in AWS, you are actually using the storage optimized one. And finally, the accelerated computing instance, wherein suppose your application's main task is video rendering or doing a remote workstation where there is a need to have a high fidelity graphics in the real time, then you need not just the acceleration at the software level, but you really need the acceleration at the hardware level. And then you should make sure that your instance type is accelerated computing instance family. And finally, the high performance compute optimized instance family is a purpose built to offer the best price performance for the application that does a large complex simulation and deep learning kind of workloads. So in summary, these are the major instance family type. One is general purpose. If you are actually having equal weightage for your CPU, RAM, storage, then general purpose is the one that you should use. Compute optimized is basically wherever your application is actually going to use an intense compute resource, then compute optimized. If your application is loading a lot of information in the lot of data in the RAM, random access memory for processing, then memory optimized. Accelerated computing is basically if you need the hardware level speed for your applications, then accelerated computing. And again, the final one, high performance compute optimized, will be used in case of that's basically a purpose built to offer the best price performance for the application, again, that has a large complex simulations and learning workload. That's it for today's video. Hope that was helpful. Meet you guys in another video soon.